Sarah moved into the apartment on Pine Street, hoping to rebuild her life after a rough divorce. The building was old but charming, with tall windows, creaky wooden floors, and the kind of quiet that made it feel safe. Her unit was on the second floor, and according to her lease and the landlord, the third floor above her had been vacant for over a year. The last tenants had left mysteriously, he said, and the unit remained untouched since then. At the time, Sarah didn't think much of it. Empty units in older buildings weren't unusual, and the quiet was something she welcomed after the emotional chaos she'd been through. For the first week, everything seemed normal. She spent her evenings reading, sipping tea, and getting used to the sounds of the building settling. Pipes creaked, floors groaned, but nothing out of the ordinary. That changed on the sixth night. Just after midnight, she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps pacing across the ceiling above her bedroom. They moved back and forth, then stopped, then started again with a sudden burst of movement that sounded like someone running. Her eyes snapped open in the dark, her heart thudding. She waited, holding her breath, but the steps continued. She told herself it must be the building shifting, or maybe a raccoon in the attic. But the footsteps were too rhythmic, too human. She tried to dismiss it, but every night after that, the sounds returned, always late, always above her. Sometimes it was slow pacing, other times sharp bangs like furniture being dragged. She pressed her ear to the ceiling once and heard what sounded like someone breathing deep, slow, steady. It sent a chill down her spine. She finally brought it up with her landlord, Mr. Keller, when they crossed paths outside. He looked surprised when she mentioned the noise. Confused even, he told her again that the unit was empty, sealed off, and had no utilities connected. There shouldn't be anyone up there, not even maintenance. He didn't offer an explanation or a solution. He just muttered something about old buildings having strange acoustics and walked away, leaving her with more questions than answers. The sounds above Sarah's apartment grew worse as the days passed. At first, it was just the footsteps, soft and measured, as if someone were pacing, but soon she began to hear the dragging. It started around 1 a.m. every night, a low, grating noise like furniture being pulled slowly across a hardwood floor. It would stop and start again, longer each time, as if something was being moved inch by inch. The noise didn't match the layout of the floor plan she'd seen. There was no reason for that kind of movement directly above her bed. One night, she tried recording the sounds. She left her phone on the windowsill near the ceiling. In the morning, the recording revealed not just the dragging and footsteps, but something far more unsettling: soft whispers. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Urgent, repetitive, like someone chanting or pleading. The whispers were followed by what sounded like shallow breathing and a faint scratching, as though fingernails were being dragged across drywall. She showed the recording to a coworker, who told her to call the police. When she finally did, 2 officers arrived and searched the building, including the supposedly empty apartment above. They found dust, cobwebs, and an untouched layer of grime. No footprints, no signs of movement. Sarah asked if they had checked the vents or crawl spaces. They said there weren't any large enough for a person to fit through. That night, the noises returned louder than before. This time, it wasn't just above her. She heard the whispering behind her bathroom mirror, then later near the heating vent in the kitchen. Objects began to shift slightly in her apartment. Picture frames tilted. Cupboard doors creaked open. Her toothbrush lay on the floor in the morning when she was sure she'd left it in its holder. Sarah began to feel watched. It wasn't just the noises anymore. It was the chilling sensation that someone was studying her, tracking her movements even when no one was around. She started locking every window and door obsessively, double-checking them before bed. She avoided mirrors and turned off the lights in her bedroom earlier than usual. The unease wasn't in her mind alone, her body felt it too. A constant tension gripped her shoulders and sleep became impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined something standing over her, just outside her line of vision dot. Then the Polaroids started appearing. The first one was on her kitchen counter, a photo of her asleep in bed, taken from above. She gasped when she saw it, her heart thudding in her chest. The timestamp showed 2:47 Amma time she remembered vividly for the dragging noise she'd heard that night. There was no camera in her apartment, no tripod, and she lived alone. She tore the picture into pieces and threw it out, trying to convince herself it had been some twisted prank. But the next night, another photo appeared on her pillow. She was turned toward the wall in that one, curled into herself, her hand loosely gripping the edge of the blanket. Her eyes were half open, though she didn't remember waking dot each night brought more photos, left in different places inside her sock drawer, under her bathroom mat, between the pages of her journal. Some were taken in near pitch darkness, the flash barely illuminating her sleeping form, and one she wasn't in bed at all. She was standing, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her eyes completely black, staring at the lens. Her clothes were soaked, and her mouth was parted as if mid-whisper. She had no memory of standing like that. The discovery of her father's old flip phone came out of nowhere. Sarah found it lying on her kitchen table one morning, the screen faintly, lit as if it had just been used. She hadn't seen the device in years, not since the funeral. The phone had been buried with him, sealed inside the casket as a sentimental gesture. There was no way it should have been there, no logical reason for its sudden reappearance. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The screen displayed one notification, a voicemail. The time read 2:13 a.m. She pressed play with a shaky thumb. At first, there was nothing but static. Then a familiar voice crackled through raspy, broken, but unmistakably her father's. He said her name once, then again. Each time slower or distorted, as if he was struggling to speak through water or static. She dropped the phone in shock. The message ended abruptly, and when she tried to replay it, the voicemail was gone. That night, the phone lit up again. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a new message waiting. She refused to listen. She locked the device in a drawer and tried to forget it. But the next morning, the phone was back on the table, screen glowing. Battery fully charged. The calls continued. Each one more garbled, the voice more distant and inhuman. Sometimes she heard whispers in the background, not her father's, but others layered beneath, murmuring things she couldn't understand. Once, she thought she heard her own voice, whispering something back. She took the phone to a tech shop, hoping to trace the origin of the calls, but the technician found no data, no signal history, no explanation. The SIM card was blank. When she returned home that evening, the technician's business card was on her doorstep, torn in half, and a third voicemail was already waiting. Sarah's paranoia had grown into full-blown obsession. She stopped going to work, covered every mirror, and taped black plastic over the windows. The voicemail messages were coming every night now, always at 2:13 a.m., and they no longer sounded remotely human. Sometimes they were long, filled with distorted groaning or screeching static. Other times they were just a single whisper that echoed in her mind long after the message ended. She began to dream of her father, not the man she remembered, but something wearing his skin, something with hollow eyes and a jaw that clicked when it moved. One night, while desperately searching for any logical explanation, she ripped up part of the floorboards in her bedroom, following a cold draft and the sound of a soft scratching below. Beneath the wooden planks, she discovered a narrow crawl space she hadn't known existed. Inside, there were strange objects, old Polaroids of her as a child, hand-drawn symbols, and a withered notebook with pages torn out. She flipped through. what remained and found incoherent ramblings, drawn maps of the apartment, and repeated phrases written in red ink that smeared when touched. Deeper inside the crawl space, behind a rusted grate, she discovered the source of the whispers. A speaker, ancient and dust-covered, crackled with the same static as the voicemails. It was wired into the wall, connected to something she couldn't trace. Sarah tried to follow the wires, but they disappeared into darkness too narrow for her to crawl through. That night, the voicemail changed. It wasn't her father's voice at all, it was her own, repeating something she never remembered saying. Her voice sounded calm, almost relieved, as it described the things she'd found under the floor. And then, just before the message ended, she heard breathing that matched the rhythm of her own, but it wasn't coming from the phone. The end.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.